So children are always making decisions about three things. They're always assessing and evaluating themselves, others, and the world. And they're always asking, am I good or bad? Am I capable or not capable? Can I trust my mom or my teachers, my friends or not? Is the world or my classroom safe or not? And based on this assessment, they will decide if they will survive or thrive. And everything that we do is communicating a message to a child. So there is no way not to communicate. And think of this way. If a client or a parent or a friend sends you an email and you don't respond, are you communicating something? So there is no way not to communicate with children. Everything that we do or we say is giving them a message. And then we have the 2-year-old who wants to clear the plate, but we are afraid that they're going to break the dish. We end up saving the dish, but we break their spirit, their courage. Or they put their shoes on by themselves and we say, oh, but that's on the wrong foot, sweetie. So we're often giving them messages. Or when they have a conflict and we say, oh, this is so mean. How can you do this? Or you should like your friend. We're giving them a message that, you're mean or bad or good. So they're always assessing, and we are always giving them a message. And the environment is giving them a message. So it's not just the physical environment, but the psychological climate that we are promoting at home or in our classrooms. Who is a parent here? Okay, thanks. So survive or thrive. How can we help our children thrive? And why would we do that? So this is really a lot about social-emotional learning, and the reasons why we should adopt. And Maria Montessori already, she was so ahead of her time that she, without really explicitly telling or creating a social-emotional curriculum, she set this optimum environment for children to thrive, where they have the ability to feel independent and feel capable and do things for themselves. And they have the guidance of an adult who is sending those positive messages about themselves and who is helping with conflict resolution in a way that the child is empowered to feel independent and capable to do it themselves. They're getting the words for it, or they are somehow being guided to do that. And we want to take her work even further, because if I always keep imagining, if she was still alive, what would she have done in another 100 years of, making this educational model better and better? Because I'm sure she wouldn't have just stopped as it was. She would have, kept going with it. So how can we keep this moving and improve and bring even more, amazing tools and strategies into the classroom? So I always say that 3 big reasons why this is so important is because the negative behavior is common. It happens. Teachers are often, there's distractions, peer conflicts, there's the child who's wandering around. There's so much, and it's the job of the teacher to manage those negative behaviors. And then the negative behavior impact the learning that's happening in the classroom. So maybe you have to interrupt a lesson, or you have to, somehow the negative behavior is constantly making you alter your classroom management plan. And without the social-emotional climate, a healthy social-emotional climate, the learning is impacted. If the students are afraid that they're going to be teased, or they are not confident that they can thrive in that environment, or if they don't feel a connection with the teacher, they won't learn to the potential that they could learn. So how can we all get into this business of nourishing spirits and giving children purpose? So let's start, before I go there. What are some of the challenges you're having today with your students in your classrooms? We're just going to brainstorm. Yes? Saying no and I'm bored. Okay.
Not finding anything to do.
Not finding anything to do. Arguing.
I have a very small classroom of 5, and the youngest 6-year-old is
And she gets frustrated with that? So frustration. Copying inappropriate behavior from other peers.
Feeling like they have to entertain everybody.
Feeling that like they have to entertain everybody. Not having resources to meet the needs of special needs, of children with special needs.
And a group of toddlers who doesn't like class all together, they react to each other with toddlers who react to each other instead of moving forward and maturing.
So immature conflict or interactions. Ignoring, not listening. Sibling dynamics.
You have one child that is very negative all the time, but it's impacting the whole class. It's like everything she'll say something to another child, and then there's some type of argument, and she always has the last word.
So one student with negative behavior that is kind of contagion and it spreads the negative behavior around. Mm-hmm. A bully. Mm-hmm. Tattling, getting into others' business. So girls being mean. Yeah, the mean girls. So again, managing children with special needs or. Mm-hmm. Good. Another one? Exclusion of someone at recess or conflicts. Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody with problems with like tantruming or whining, children interrupting? The child who's wandering around, I don't know what to do, I can't do it.
A child that accuses everyone around him.
The child who accuses everyone. Okay. Hitting, yeah, hitting, hurting. Anybody with back talking? I guess we kind of mentioned that. Okay, so it seems like you guys covered most of everything that I always get from teacher workshops. So when I give my workshops, I ask this very same thing. I usually always start a workshop saying, if there's anybody here who's not having a problem, raise your hand. And of course, nobody ever raised their hand. Everybody laughs, but we're all having trouble in our classrooms. So grabbing, pushing, hurting, disrespect or cursing, noncompliance, back-talking, poor peer interaction, being off task, making fun of others, whining, tantrums, power struggles. So now let's fast forward. So imagine your students at the age of 25 or even earlier, like you meet them and they're in college. So think of you're out somewhere and you meet a student and now they're in college. What do you want to see? What do you want them to have? What kind of skills and characteristics you would like to see in your students when they leave for college? Good work ethic, respectful, stewardship, confidence, loving, collaborating, self-efficacy, okay. Staying out of jail, that's a good one. Sorry? Self-motivated, compassionate, resilient, time management, problem solvers, good manners, integrity, self-regulation,
Stewards of the earth.
Stewards of the earth. Not entitled. Happy. Independent. Honest and gracious. Lifelong learners, and on and on. So let's see. Here we go. You guys covered most of and more. So the list is endless, and those are the things that we want. So parents and teachers and educators, they both have shared a common goal. We all want children to have those set of skills and characteristics when they are grown-ups. So independent, kind, capable, resilient, responsible, emotionally stable, problem solvers, creative, passionate, confident, and all of those other things you said. So now, let's look at both lists next to each other, side by side. So the list of challenges is where we are right now. And the second list is where we want to be. So this second list needs to be our roadmap, our big picture. Is the goal, is what we're working towards. So that's our guiding star. So when we are teaching, if we can stop and think of, what are they learning right now from the way that I'm interacting with them or the approach that I'm using, whatever it is that we are doing, and just ask ourselves, are they learning those things? So now do we have the right intentions? Yes. Do we all have the right tools? Not always. So the common tools today for teaching or for correcting negative behavior is shaming, blaming, threatening, dismissing the child's feelings, praise, bribing, rewarding, rescuing the child, enabling, timeouts, punishments. And I'm sure you're going to think, oh, no, we're Montessorians. We don't do that. That must be a public school thing, but it's not us. And I have been training so many Montessori teachers. And we are so amazing. And we don't do a lot of those things. We're already so much better. And we have a much better interaction with students. But I have seen, I don't know, of course, it depends from classroom to classroom. But do you have a peace table, peace area, peace rug, or anything like that? Often I have seen many teachers, even in a Montessori school, who will use the peace table or peace area as a sort of a timeout, where you send the child, you isolate the child, and now you need to be excused from circle, go sit on the peace chair. And that's essentially the same thing as a timeout. I have seen, I don't know if, I'm probably guilty of this, of doing this many times in the classroom when we all get into circle and there's always one or two who are still squirming around or not sitting still, and then we say to that person that's next to it, oh, I really like the way that Sophia is sitting so nicely. And what we're doing? We're shaming the person that's right next, and we're really not genuinely praising Sophia. We're just trying to make the other person feel badly, and that invites peer rivalry. So now what do people think of Sophia? She's the goody one, the teacher likes Sophia best, and now we end up creating a conflict. If you need to do your journal and a math activity and then do some, or something, a reading, and then you can go to the little yard. I've seen that. Or let's do some, or if you want to have a lesson with me, then you need to do something else. So we're, sometimes there's threatens, or we're in a nicer way, but we still sometimes use some of those common tools. And then there's the long-term tools. Empowering, showing faith, asking a question, validating the child's feelings, encouraging, giving freedom and choices, which we do a lot already, connecting before we correct with them, a space for cool off, which we have, the peace table, peace area, for them to cool off, and then nonverbal communications. So I'm going to go over some of this, but I'll tell you a story first. So this is Pollyanna, and she's my oldest. But when she was 4, she wanted to have a pet. So she got her a bunny. And then a few days later, I walked into the room, and she was shaking this bunny upside down by the hind legs. And I was terrified, mortified, and so angry, and how could she do that? And then in a matter of 20 seconds, I did all the wrong things. I started with the shaming and blaming. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? That's so mean. And then I went to threatening. Do we need to give this bunny to another family with nicer little girls? And then I sent her away. You know, Pollyanna, just go away. I can't even talk to you right now. So shaming, blaming, threatening, and a timeout in a matter of 20 seconds. And then I felt horrible, of course. And I thought, oh my goodness, Lorena, you know better. Like, what are you doing? How can you fix this? And then I gave myself a timeout. So I sat on my cool-off space and started thinking that when I was a child, I had done some mean things to some kittens once, and I felt horrible. I don't know if anyone heard that cats will always fall on their fours. So I tested out. So I remember that, and then I also thought that, well, we just got this bunny, but I really didn't take time to practice with her what to do with this bunny. She only had stuffed animals that she could throw up and down, and it was all fine. And so then I decided to approach it again and do a take 2. So I, talked to her, but I got down to her level. I touched her shoulder. I looked at her in the eye. And then I said, well, when I was a little girl, I did some mean things to some kittens once. I didn't tell her what I did, but I said that. And the second I did that, I could see the light in her eye and the way lifting off her shoulder. She's, oh, you really? Oh, I'm not mean. So she felt validated and she felt connected. And then I went on to ask her, so what are some of the things we can do with this bunny? And then we brainstormed a little list of, you can feed the bunny, you can clean the cage with me, we can give the bunny water, you can take the bunny to exercise, you can pet the bunny on your lap. So she thought of all the things she could do with the bunny. And then I apologized for the way that I talked to her before. So now, imagine that you are Pollyanna, and your mom shamed, blamed, threatened, and sent you away. Now let's look at this list. What would you learn? Nothing? Okay. Now the second time I approached her and I looked at her in the eyes, I connected with her, I validated her, and then I brainstormed, asked her for solutions, and then I apologized. What could she be learning from this list? Kindness, responsibility, problem solve, confidence. Sorry? Empathy, confidence. What was I role modeling? Patience, humility, being resilient, problem solving, compassion. Okay, so this is just to give you an example of how to use this list. You can even have that somewhere in your classroom, and you can talk to the students and explain to them how they can also be helping their friends develop those things in the way that they interact with each other. And now let's see some other things that children will need so they can thrive. So they need worthy role models. And you are probably Montessori trained teachers. And what did we do in our training? We had to walk with those trays so slowly, and then walk around the rug, roll the rug so carefully, push a chair, pull a chair, carry a table. Why did we do that? Montessori was genius. Why did we do that in our training? Because we want to be the role models, right? And that's the way we expect them to do. So Maria Montessori didn't know this, but just recently, in the past 5 to 10 years, we figured out that we have something called mirror neurons. It's the monkey see, monkey do neurons. And that explains why we yawn when someone yawns, when someone is crying, we get emotional. When we're watching a game, we're leaving that game with the players, and if they miss it, we're like, oh, they missed. So we are modeling, we are mirroring what other people are doing in front of us. So being this worthy role model, and goes even beyond just walking so slowly, using a quiet voice when we want them to be quiet, or carrying things carefully. Those mirror neurons also work for our emotional state. So if we are frazzled and anxious and stressed, what happened in your classroom? They pick it up and it goes down really fast. So we need to also role model how we solve conflicts, how we talk to our co-teacher, our assistant teacher, how we talk to the parents, how we solve conflicts with the students, because they are mirroring what we are doing. And we are all of us, humans, hardwired to want two things. We want belonging and significance. And think of belonging as attention, emotional connection. We want unconditional love. We want to fit in. We want to be part of a group. And then think of significance as personal power, autonomy, independence. We want meaning. We want purpose. So we can boil this down into love and power. So imagine your children have a bucket of love, a bucket of power, and we have to help them fill those two buckets every day. And when we're not feeling like the bucket is full, or we feel like we lose that sense of belonging and significance, the love and power, we will do something, a negative behavior, to try to get it back. So we have something called, it's a misbelief behind the behavior, but children always have a reason to do what they do. So one day, another story, I walked into another child of mine, and she was in the living room throwing her pretend foods everywhere, all over the place, all over the living room. And of course, my mother-in-law was there, my husband, and we were all ready to jump on her and say something like, we don't do this here, you need to be respectful to your toys, or, let's clean up. But I didn't let them say anything, and I waited, because Montessori's, we observe. And then I waited for her to be done, and when she was done, I asked with a big smile and inviting, what were you doing? And she didn't have to think twice. She said, I'm a zookeeper and I'm feeding the animals. So she had a very good reason to do what she was doing. So often children, what it looks like misbehavior is really just something else, and they have a nice reason for it, which of course doesn't, it's not in alignment with what we expect from them. So often children it looks like they misbehave for three things. And I wasn't going to even talk about this, but I'll give this to you as an extra. So there's three things for us to look before we even think our children, our students are misbehaving. It could be lack of a basic need. So your student is too tired, hungry, sick, needs to move around, needs to explore. So the lack of one of those things may look like misbehavior, the way that they're acting. Or they're acting out because it's just developmentally appropriate. So you have 4-year-olds in your classroom who like to run, scream, and climb. And what should we expect of a 4-year-old? Exactly that. So I know parents, when I do a workshop for parents, they always complain about those things, and then I ask them, what should your child be doing at this age? And then they realize, oh, well, I guess they aren't just doing that. So it could be lack of a basic need, or it could be developmentally appropriate, or lack of a specific skill. So a 3-year-old who's biting or hurting or pushing, but because he doesn't have a lot of verbal skills yet and he can't solve the conflict, so his behavior looks like misbehavior, but it's really lack of a specific skill. And now let's see the next thing that children need to thrive. Children need mutual respect, and we're pretty good with that. However, we're not amazing yet. So being kind and firm, I don't know if you can relate to this, but most teachers start out really nice, until they can't stand the kids because they're walking all over them and they feel like it's out of control. And then they lay down the law, they yell or do something. And then they hate themselves because they don't want to be that kind of teacher. And then they go back to being very nice. So we sometimes do this dance between permissiveness and authoritarian, all day long. Or we have the team teaching, in which one teacher is more on the firmer side and the other is more on the kind side, the softer side. And then, and this happens too in marriages, right? One parent is in one more on the firmer side, the other one's on the kinder side. And every time that we see the other being too strict, too tough, then we soften it up a little bit to compensate for the other one. And every time that the strict one see the other one being too wishy-washy, too permissive, they tighten up a notch and to compensate for the lack of firmness that the other one has. And then that brings the team apart, even further apart, and gives to the students a mixed message and inconsistency. And now they can play the teachers, or they just don't know, what is it? They don't have clear rules or clear expectations. So that's what the mutual respect is. It's really being kind and firm at the same time all the time. So the kind part is being respectful to the child and kind to the child. And the firm part is that you're respectful to yourself. So you need to make sure that you're respecting yourself and not letting, not feeling like you're being taken advantage of, or you're, being a doormat, or, you don't have control over the situation. So children need that because they really need the healthy boundaries. Think of if we were in a dark space where we can't hear or see anything, what's our gut reaction? What would we do instinctively? Try to find something, a way out. Panic. So we would probably try to see if we find a wall, a doorknob, a window, something, right? And if we don't find, we panic. How scary is it? And children, when they don't have the healthy boundaries, that's exactly how they're feeling. So they're pushing the limits, pushing your buttons, and pushing the boundaries until they find something. But if you never find, you keep going, and you escalate, and you get even, the behavior, which was, one thing, now it's really out of control, but because they haven't found that boundary yet, and then they're really scared. So we want to make sure that those healthy boundaries are there and that are really clear and easy for them to see, so they know exactly how far they can go and when we're crossing the line. And then looking for long-term solutions for poor behavior. And I'll do a little activity. So I'm going to need some volunteers. And I know we're so cramped up and out of space. Maybe I'm just going to do, can I assign volunteers? Maybe I have this whole group stand up and face everybody. Oh, you too. Yes, join us. So I probably I need 14 of you. So do we have 14? And I'm going to take this. So 14 of you. Yeah, if you can just line up right here. Let's just see. Take one and pass it down this way in the order that it is. Oh. Okay. And now you take one and pass it down this way. We might need a couple more here. Yeah, 2 more. And then I need one very special guest to be a child, to be a student. Anybody who wants? I see a hand. Yeah, come, be my student. So here's the situation. Here's the scenario. She's a 4-year-old, a primary student, 4 or 5-year-old, and you just had an argument with a friend, and you're really angry. You're saying very hurtful things like, I hate her or hate him. I don't want to be his friend anymore. I just hate him. I want to hurt him. So awful things. And those are your teachers. So you're going to start right here. You're the first one. You're going to start right here, and you're going to go down that way. And each teacher is going to say something. You don't need to respond. You just think about what you're thinking, feeling, deciding, let it sink in for a second, and then move on to the next teacher. And you teachers have your script, and you have a little hint of how you can deliver. And you're going for an award-winning performance. So there you go. So, oh, wait, let me pass the microphone.
Just go to your seat until you can talk nicely. Well, what did you do?
You should love your friend.
I don't want to hear you talk like that again.
You don't really feel that way.
Oh, sweetie, don't worry. He's going to be in trouble. Be nice to him today, and I'll give you an extra sticker.
Okay, so what were you thinking, feeling, and deciding?
They made me feel really sad.
They made you feel sad? Mm-hmm. And what were you going to do?
Probably do it again.
Probably do it again. What were you teachers feeling?
Like I was shaming him or her, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Blaming.
Blaming.
Shame.
So what were your teaching styles? Each one of you had a teaching style.
Punishing.
So you have the punishing, blaming, shaming, threatening, dismissing feelings, rescuing, cuddling, taking sides, and bribing or rewarding. Okay, so now again, she is a 4-year-old having the same problem and saying awful, hurtful things about this friend. But now the teachers went to positive discipline training, and let's see what they will say.
Relationships can be so hard sometimes.
I'll pass to that.
Would you like to punch some dough or stomp outside?
You sound really angry. I can't blame you. I've felt angry many times.
How can I help the two of you solve this problem?
Would you like to draw or write how you feel right now?
I trust you and your friend can solve this problem on your own.
Maybe we both need a break from each other.
Okay. How are you feeling?
Great.
You feeling great? What are you deciding about yourself, about your teachers?
I feel really good about myself. I don't feel like my confidence is shattered or my emotions. I feel like all these people love me and they're going to take good care of me. And
Did you feel connected with them?
I'm sorry?
Did you feel connected?
Yes, definitely.
So now let's look at that list one more time. So think of the teachers that spoke to you first, and what could you be learning? Oh, it will come. So what would you be learning from the first teachers that you interacted with? From that list, the second list. This list.
Oh, that list. Sorry.
Yeah.
From the first
For
group?
the first teachers.
Probably nothing.
Nothing? Now from the second set of teachers, what could you be learning?
Independence, kindness, feeling capable, all of those things.
Problem solving. So what were your teaching styles, teachers? So you have connecting before correcting, giving choices, validating feelings, asking a curiosity question that invites problem solving and thinking, positive redirection, giving an alternative for that behavior so they can go outside or punch dough or, oh no, that was the writing or drawing. You had the giving choice. And then having faith and using the cool-off space. So the two of you may need some time away from each other So that could be like the peace table being used for that. Thank you so much, teachers. Yay. I can put it online. I don't know, are they letting us put handouts online? I think they will let us. Because last year I did it. I wasn't sure if this year they would let us do that again. What were you thinking, feeling, and deciding when you watched this activity? They connected with the student. That was the key thing. Sorry, say that again. The same, if the teacher was hitting the teacher instead? Oh, yes, you would use similar approach. And of course, if then there's aggression, first we need to, intervene. We might have to step in and supervise that and make sure that they're not. But then I would do the conflict resolution based on those same statements. So it looks like the two of you need a break from each other. How can I help the two of you? So the reason why we do that is that we do not want to take sides. And the reason why we don't want to take sides is because we don't want to create that bully and victim roles. When one or two children are the bully ones and the other ones are always being hurt or they're victimized, because it's bad for both. And it's giving both children a negative perception of self. So the child who is the bully thinks, I'm mean, I'm bad. The child who is the victim thinks, I'm weak, I'm not capable, I'm not confident, I always need rescue, I need someone to help solve my problems for me. So it's really negative for either one of the students. So yes, I would use those same tools to address when children are actually getting physical. I would first probably let them cool off a little bit. That's another thing that sounds very counterintuitive because we have all been raised to, got to solve the conflict right away, or children are not going to know or remember why they're being reprimanded, or they're not going to remember what happened, and we want to solve conflict when everybody's really heated. And now we know with the brain research that's not effective. So there's a doctor called Daniel Siegel, and he wrote The Whole Brain Child, Parenting from the Inside Out, Mindsight. He wrote several books, but he talks about the brain on the palm of the hand. Have anyone seen this model before? Yes. So if the children are flipped, so the brain on the palm of the hand is that this part is our primitive brain. It's regulating just our automatic bodily functions, our breathing, digestive. And then we have the midbrain with our memories, our gut reactions, the freeze, flight, and fight responses. And then we have the cortex, so if we think of the brain, and we process the senses, we process our thinking, and then the prefrontal cortex is where we develop our intuition, flexibility, ability to communicate, read social cues, ability to rationalize, sense of morality, our communication. So all the good stuff is happening here, but it's not even developed until the age of 25. So we can't even expect that from our students yet. But if we are stressed, even us as adults, if they're pushing our buttons, we flip our lid. And that means that we don't have access to that whole brain, and we can do those things. We sometimes don't even know how inappropriate we're being. We lose, sense of it. So if two children are flipped, is it a good time to solve a conflict? No. If we are flipped, is it a good time for us to solve a problem with the child? So the beautiful thing about the team teaching is you can always tag your other teacher, your friend, your coworker to go solve that if you are flipped. But if the children are flipped, I would say to help them feel better first. So one thing that I always, if you can take one thing away, we all do better when we feel better. And children will only do better when they feel better. And that's also counterintuitive because we kind of want to make them suffer, we want to punish them, or we want to make them learn a lesson. And we don't want to make them feel better. And a lot of teachers or parents say, oh, but wouldn't that be rewarding them for bad behavior? And then I say, no, because when we help them feel better, they learn to make themselves feel better, and then they learn that self-regulation that they need. They learn self-control. They learn the tools that they need so they can get out of that, funk, like they can get out of that mood or get out of that situation. Questions? I saw. Can control his. Mm-hmm. So she's saying a young child who just passes by and hits someone else just for kicks, and it wouldn't really understand what it is that they're doing. So that's a good point. A lot of children are just too young it's hard for us to even rationalize with them or explain those things to them, and that would follow into that category of developmentally appropriate, because under 3, it's usually developmentally appropriate. They're not intentionally trying to be naughty and just make us angry or annoy us. They're really just developmentally appropriate, but they're so inconvenient sometimes that we really, have a hard time handling them. But for that, I would say that this child probably wants to engage, but they don't know how to do it. Often when children are just provoking, they want that interaction. They want that social interaction. They want to push each other's buttons to see, wow, what are you all about? Like, can I push your buttons and find out more about you? I just want to engage with you, but I don't know what to do to engage with you, so I'm going to do this annoying, attention-seeking, behavior to get your attention. So also that lack of a specific skill. So then you can maybe give that skill. Oh, I can see that you want to play with Sophia. How can you ask her? Or, talk to her and see, do you want to come out in the little yard with me? Or would you like to sit and draw a picture with me? So you give this child a better way to ask for that attention and that interaction from others without hurting. Or you can say, how can you do this without pushing? Or how can you solve this problem without hurting? I don't know why this keeps sleeping. Another question? Any questions? Mm-hmm.
Home having the space to observe, but in the class it might be dangerous to children. So it's kind of like, I feel like, would you interrupt them?
Yes. So she's talking about how at home we might have time to observe a behavior, but in the classroom we might have to intervene for safety reasons. And yes, anytime there's a safety issue, you don't want to watch and see what happens. You just want to get there right away. But if it is something that, I even read, and I can't remember which book of Maria Montessori I read, that she talks about the children playing with the materials and how they would make the tower, the pink tower, and they would knock it just for the pleasure of watching it fall. And that was a point of interest. That was one of the things. And today, do we let them do that in our classrooms? I have a feeling that Maria Montessori intended to be a little bit different, that she knew that children needed to do those naughty things because it was part of their learning. So she allowed that. So with that example of the throwing the fruits, it's more like this. You watch them combining the pink tower with the broad stairs and something else, and now they're making a structure. We often don't let them do that. But it would be for you probably to watch and then ask, what were you doing? And I'm sure they would have a good reason behind it. And then, of course, you need to remind them of what the guidelines are, what the rules for, what your expectations are, what's in alignment with your values and your desires in your classroom. But for some teachers, that might be something that it's okay. For some teachers, it may not. And you have to do something that feels good and that you feel good about it. Because you don't want to just have the rules in your classroom just because they are rules. You want to make the rules that you really care. Because if they sense that you don't care about that rule, they won't follow. Like, in my house, I'm pretty loose with the creativity, and I like them, and I was like that in my classroom too. So if I try to enforce something that they knew my heart wasn't set on it, they usually wouldn't take it serious because they know that we're not strong about it. The things that we really care and that our heart is set on that rule, they usually live up to it. They are the rules that they really get quickly, and they fall in place quickly. So it's usually the thinking about what it is that you're doing, why you are doing, and what you're teaching when you're doing it, and then realigning with your values and desires, and then making sure that you feel safe and good and confident about what you're asking them to do, because then they will sense it, and usually they will have a better response to it. I hope that was helpful. So now I'm just going to give you simple, quick conflict resolution tools. How many minutes do we have? Do we have a timekeeper for me? 4:46. And this ends at 5:30. Okay, so good. Yeah. I talk so much sometimes. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm running out of time. No, so I have plenty of time. I do want to do some question and answering at the end. So classroom meetings. Have you ever done a classroom meeting before? Anybody? Okay. So we do circle time. And circle time is kind of our classroom meeting. So a few ways for you to use your circle time in a more purposeful way would be to kind of incorporate the classroom meetings into it. You don't have to do it every day, but maybe once a week, maybe every other week. And this would be the format for it. So they're all sitting in circle already for your circle time. But we usually start with compliments and appreciations. So I actually go into the schools when I'm training faculties to use this positive discipline solutions in the classroom. And I'll run a couple of circles with the teachers first, and they are helping me so they get the hang of it. And then eventually they will run those classroom meetings with the teachers themselves, or with the students themselves. So we start with a compliment or an appreciation. So we sometimes have a talking stick, sometimes even like we light a little candle, those fake little candles. You don't want to. And then we pass it around, but we create a nice little, like a mood, like we put the lights down, we make it cozy, and it's just like a sweet time that we get around circle. And then they say something nice about someone else, and they go around saying something that they appreciate or that they're happy about. And then we cover like a couple of items in the agenda. And now, of course, you would have this agenda in your classroom. And when there's a conflict, there's a problem, or kids are not listening, or children are, mistreating the work, or they are stepping over other people's rugs. Whatever you see in your classroom management that's happening, children are wandering around, children are, picking fights. Whatever it is, then you bring up in the on the classroom meeting. For parents, it's family meeting, but you only want to cover one or two things. You want to make those meetings short and sweet. And then the way you would share those or work through those items is sharing while others listen, and then discussing without trying to fix. So this is the problem that Sophia wrote in our classroom meeting. She's upset that people were taking her work, or people were stepping on her mat, or whatever. And then nobody's really trying to fix, but just discussing. How does that make you feel? What are some things that we could do? And then asking for problem-solve help. So brainstorming solutions for, and not focusing on the blame and shame, like who did it and who's doing that in the classroom, why are we doing that? Forget the finding who did what to whom. Just focus on the solution, and then what can we do to solve it? What can we do so this doesn't happen the next time? And then you work to the problem. And then you end, so you started on a good note with the compliments and appreciations, then you solved some problems, and then you want to end on a good note with deciding like future plans, like a fun activity that you want to do together, or a community building project that you want to have with them, or gardening, or making some like a project that they would be interested in working together. So you always want to sandwich the problems and start on a good note and end on a good note, and then have the problem in the middle. So that would be the classroom meeting. Sorry. So it could be, if the problem is brought up by the teacher, then the teacher does share the problem and then gather information from the students. If it's a student who was having a problem and decided, I want to put in our family meeting. So think of this as a very democratic classroom where they have the freedom to go there and put an item on the list. You might have to write it for them if they're not writing, but they can dictate what they want to be on the classroom meeting. And then they would just share that without trying to fix, and just looking for solutions but not trying to like, oh, you should tell him to stop doing that. You should have just told the teacher. So you want to look for, and they might brainstorm solutions that you're not happy about, but you want to validate everyone's ideas. So you write down, when a brainstorming activity, you always write everything down. Don't editorialize, don't censor anybody's answer, welcome everybody's opinion. And then you go over and say, let's see, what really makes sense, what could we really do in our classroom that would work, and then maybe you take some out and keep the best ones, and then try one thing, and maybe for a week, and if that doesn't work, you can try another solution, and then you can try to work the problem. But have them being problem solvers, because then they will be learning that list of independence, capability, problem solving, being creative. So you want to give them that power. And then they get getting that personal power, autonomy, independence, and purpose and meaning that they want, but in a productive way. And when children feel empowered, they have less need to engage you in a power struggle. If they're feeling empowered through solving their own problems, their environment is empowering them, they don't have the need to be pushing back and back talking and power struggling with you as much. I had someone raise a hand. There's a whole process for the classroom meetings, and I usually, if I'm doing this training in a school, we talk about what are some of the guidelines and expectations for the classroom meetings. So not saying anything mean to one another, not being personal. When we bring up a problem, we don't name who was involved in the problem. We just state the problem as, and I'll give you an example right now. This one. If you don't have anything in your agenda, you can just sit in circle. So imagine your circle time, your regular circle time, and you did the appreciation, and then you don't have anything to discuss. And maybe this can even be your very first classroom meeting. We have a little picture of a bug or a little plastic bug that you probably have in your language cabinet somewhere, a little miniature bug, and then a little wand. And then you explain that some things upset us and they bother us, and we say that something bugs us. When something bugs you, and then you can give an example. It bugs me when children don't listen to me, or it bugs me when children forget to push in their chairs. And then you have the wand, and you say, and I wish children would clean up after their things. So you can, and then you model that, and then you pass the bug and the wand to the next child, and they have a turn to say what bugs them and what they wish. So then you can even, if depending on the age, first you can brainstorm some things that really bugs us, and you can create a list of bugs, and then a list of things that you wish would happen instead, or you can just pass it around, and if the one child doesn't want to do it, she can just pass it and skip her turn and pass it to the next person. So it bugs me when people, and always telling them to say people, not like it bugs me when, Sophia does that to me. So you don't want to say names. So it bugs me when people step on my work, and I wish people would walk around the rug without stepping on it. Yes. Sorry, say that again. Yeah, I wish. I know. Some of them will miss the point, and I made the mistake of even, and I'll tell you not to do this, don't even take the bug and the wand out until you explain the concept. Once you get that bug out, they get so confused with the whole bothering and upsetting me and debugging. It's like, it bugs me when the spider bites me. It bugs me when a bee comes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I did that, and it didn't go well. So I learned. So I don't even take this stuff out until I explain the concept. And then I say, oh, and look, we're going to use this and this to do this activity. But first, get it all straightened out, and the wish that it's nothing to do with princess or, that kind of wishing. And then you just use that as a little tool. But teachers always, a lot of the teachers, just put it on a tray and keep it on the shelf as a work that they can take out whenever they have a conflict. So they can just take the tray with the bug and the wish and bring it to the peace table, and they can sit there and say, it bugs me when, and then that's the situation that they can do it to one another and be very personal. It bugs me when you pushed me, and I wish you would respect my body. So then you can even do it with them and give them the words.
Are you going to explain the peace table more fully later?
So the peace table is, so Daniel Siegel with the model for the brain, he talks about how we need a cool-off space. We need this, a positive timeout, a purposeful timeout, instead of just excusing your child from circle. Okay, you're not doing the right thing, you can take a chair, or you can go sit at the peace chair for a little bit, or whatever. Instead of doing that, you would use the peace table as a cool-off space for the child to feel better. So what are some of the things, and that brings me to the next activity. So all those activities are kind of connected with the peace table, the peace chair, the peace area, the peace rug, whatever you have in your classroom. A wheel of choice. So you can sit with the students, and a student who has a really hard time, an aggressive child, or one of your most problematic students, and you can say, and you don't need to have all those options. This is for a much older student. You can start cutting the circle into like 4, just in quarters, and have 4 things, or even in half, if 2 options is enough for the age of your child. But you talk about what are some of the things that you can do instead of hurting, instead of pushing, instead of biting, and then you can ignore, you can put it on the classroom meeting agenda, you can draw about it, you can take a cool down time, you can write about it, you can walk away, you can give a I statement. I statement is, we often even talk to our students, or maybe not so much Montessori teachers because we kind of know better, but some teachers will say, oh, the teacher is really upset about what you're doing. Oh, that's making the teacher so sad, or the teacher feels this and that. We, instead of talking in the first person, we talk in the third person, and parents do this a lot. Oh, mommy is so sad with this, or dad is going to be, we don't talk in the I statement, and we should always own what we want to tell them, and always talk it from the I statement. So I feel this way. And that would be one thing that the children can learn too, to just speak up and tell exactly how they feel and be confident about it. I feel this way. So this is the wheel of choice. And then again, with the cool-off space, you can incorporate that. And this wheel of choice could be for a child who's aggressive and needs alternatives for that, or it could just be a child who sometimes has a hard time sitting or has a hard time following directions, whatever it is. You can ask them, what are some of the things, or a child who gets really frustrated and has tantrums or whines, what are some of the things that make you feel good? What are some of the things that make you happy? And then you can write there, imagine that it had listening to music, writing a book, taking a walk, drinking water, sitting with a friend. So imagine that those were the options. And then you have the wheel of choice. And when the child is having a tantrum or is upset or sad or withdrawing, the child who's not engaged in anything, what would you like to do from this wheel of choice to make yourself feel happy, feel better, so you can do better? So those things are the things that you could have in your peace area, and use the peace area in that way, not for isolating the child or shaming the child or making the child look bad in front of everybody else, feeling like they are not adequate, right? So you want that peace table or peace area to be empowering the child and really truly helping the child feel better, and not as a source of shame or for them to feel negative about themselves. Because essentially the timeouts, whatever kind of timeouts, when we excuse them from circle or we make them sit down at the playground, sit out or something because they're not behaving outside, it's essentially inviting the child to feel 3 things. Badly about themselves, so I'm bad, I'm mean. Badly about you, I don't like you, or I'm going to get back at you, I'm going to make you pay for this, or how can I get away with this next time without being caught? So learning to sneak or lie. So then the child essentially still, it never really happens. We say, go sit there and think about what you just did. the last thing the child is going to do is think about what they just did. And if you even think of a situation when you were shamed or maybe reprimanded in your work by a coworker or someone else, and you felt, you probably didn't feel like, oh, this was really helpful. Now I really want to cooperate with her, right? You feel like, I'm going to show her. Or I'm going to, or you feel badly about yourself. So, or I'm still going to do this. I'm just going to tell everybody about this. But I'm still going to go about it my way. So that's essentially what the children are doing too. It's never really helping the child to do any better when we just isolate them. Did that answer your question? Yes. So it's just to use the peace area in a non-punitive, non-isolating manner. So those things could be in a peace table or could be on a tray on your shelf, and they can bring it to the peace table. Otherwise, your peace table might get too cluttered with a lot of stuff. But just for them to have those things. Or you can even have it in a cabinet and pull it out for that one child that has a really hard time finding work. You can create a wheel of choice where you empower the child to come up with a few, like 4 options of works that they enjoy doing. And then you write it down. They can draw or they can color. And then when they're wandering around, you can pull out that wheel of choice that they created and they were problem solving themselves. And they can choose, let's choose one of this for you to do right now. So they feel autonomous and empowered by that.
I know you're saying peace table, but we have very limited space. So we actually have a peace rug.
Yeah, I had a peace rug in my classroom for years. They sit there and
they can go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that we don't have the space for a table.
And the cool off, it can happen anywhere. It could happen in the bench out in your playground when the child is having a hard time with another friend. As long as it's not a punitive timeout. It's not, so you sit with them, or you say, would you like to invite a friend to come sit with you? But I really need to trust that you can be playing with your friends in a safe way. It's my job to make sure you are safe and that your body is being respected and no one hurts you. And it's my job to make sure that nobody else gets hurt. And that's why I need you to sit here with me, or just stand by me and hold my hand. Or ask a friend if a friend would want to come sit with you and keep you company for a little bit, and you tell me when you're ready to go back and join the group and do, interact in a more positive way. And then if the child says, no, but I'm ready now, you can even give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay. And then if it happens again, and if you see, well, it doesn't look like you're very ready yet, so let's try this again. Let's take a little time to cool off first. So that would be how you would be using. So you don't really need to have a peace area. You can use it outside. It can be your reading area, your book area. So the child is having a hard time in circle. You can say, would reading a book make you feel better? And then, of course, you also need to judge, like, is that going to open a can of worms? Not everybody wants to go read the book. So you're going to see what works in your classroom, and you're going to use it in a way. And you might make some mistakes, because I've made them. And then, maybe I remember once I was with, I've been training teachers and being in the classroom doing those things, but I feel like most of my examples with my children, because that's what I do all day. But I said to my middle one, who is the more aggressive one, needy, whiny one, she always hurted someone at the playground. She would always do it. And I was always embarrassed, mortified, especially because I felt like everybody's expecting me to be perfect, because I'm a parent educator, and expect my children to be amazing. So it would really make me frustrated. So I told her, and this is another bonus tool here that you can use in your classroom. If you're going to use a logical consequence, it has to follow 5 R's. It has to be respectful, related, reasonable. You have to repeat it to the child, reveal it to the child, and then ask the child to repeat it back at you. So here's what I did. She would always hurt other children. So I said, well, Annabelle, when you hurt children in the playground, we're going to have to leave. So it was respectful. It was related. It was a reasonable thing that, we can be out. It's not fun for me to go out if you are hurting other children. It's not fun for the other children. So we're going to leave. And I reveal it to her up front. And then I ask her to repeat it back at me. So what's your understanding of what's going to happen if we go to the playground and you hurt other children? Oh, Mommy, we're going to leave. Okay. So she hurted someone, And then I needed to follow through, because that is the secret. If you say it, say what you mean what you say, and then you better follow through. Because if we don't, they know our word don't mean anything. So I said, okay, you hurt someone, so now we need to leave. However, my other 2 children were doing fine. And then I had to penalize the other 2 because I needed to leave. So then I learned my lesson that I couldn't do that. And I ended up having to explain to my older children that, they were fine, but I still had to do it because I needed to follow through. And then the next time I had to say that she was going to have to stand with me or sit at the bench with me, or I would have to hold her. So you might have to talk to the student and think of what it is that's going to work in your classroom or when you are outside on a playground. So maybe it's going to hold this child for a while, or you're going to sit with the child or hold a hand. So you're going to have to play around with your guidelines and see what works. Mm-hmm. Heats the teeth. So the thing is, if the child is hitting you, then you need to be respectful to yourself and to the child, and you need to say, I can't let you hurt me, or maybe we have to walk away from each other. We're going to have to seat somewhere else, or you have to pass him to another teacher. You might have to say, I can't let you treat me this way. Let's talk again when we can both be respectful to each other. So you might have to say that to the child. And then, of course, sometimes you might just have to scoop a child who's kicking and screaming, because that's the respectful thing to do. Disrespectful is to yell, threaten, shame, and blame, and do all those other things. I always say, taking the child by the hand and walk and go away, or scoop them up and hold them, that's respectful. Disrespectful would be to do those other, common tools. But again, those tools, they are working so they will be helping the child feel the belonging and significance. They are kind and firm at the same time. They are so mutually respectful. They are helping children develop those skills that we want for them for the future, but that doesn't mean that those tools are going to work every time. So there is no one tool that will work every time or for every child. Usually what works one day doesn't work the next day. What works for one child doesn't work to the next child. When we think we got it, they change, and then we're out of tools again. So you want to have a tool belt. Like, you want to have a lot of different strategies, because then you can pull them and try and see what works. But even if nothing works, you had a better chance to model kindness, to model respect, and to have the children building those skills and characteristics so often the alternative, the traditional approach to discipline, the shame, blaming, threatening, bribing, reward, punishments, timeouts, they also don't work very effectively. They actually very ineffective, because for one, they don't teach the skills. For two, they are short-term tools, so they modify behavior right now, but who here has only had to do that once in a lifetime and then never had to do it again? If you have to do it again later in the day, if you have to do it again tomorrow with that same child, that means that tool didn't work, and it's not working. So if the traditional tools for disciplines also don't work, if you try those positive ones, purposeful tools, and they still don't work, you still had a better chance to model what you want them to have and to build those skills that you want them to develop. And you also, even if it don't work, you feel like you did the right thing, and you can feel good and proud of yourself instead of guilt or feeling like, this is not the kind of teacher I want to be. So at the end of the day, it's really about, you want to feel great as a teacher. You want to feel proud of the way that you engage with the students, the way that you interact with them, and you want to do what feels good. And all of those tools help us feel good and proud of the way that we interact with them, and we know we model the right behavior, even if they don't work. And then I always say, if everything else fails, fall back on love, because that will always work. And usually the child that is annoying us the most, and that's the most disturbing, and it's always interrupting with negative behavior and attention-seeking behavior and engaging us in power struggles, it's usually the child that needs the most love, but it's the hardest one for us to give. And then the last tool is apologies of action. So sometimes I'm sorry is not good enough. I see a lot of parents or teachers trying to force children to say I'm sorry, shake hands, give hugs. And essentially we're asking children to shove down their feelings and lie about it. And I'm sorry, they are also really smart. And I'm sorry becomes that free out of jail card when I can do whatever and then I'll just say I'm sorry and then I'm good. So we don't want that. And if our children are already trained to say sorry, then you can say, I'm sorry is a good start. What else can you do? So help them come up with things that they can do to fix. So the rule is we break it, we fix it. And that's just kind of a little say. But that would work. We spill, we get the cloth and clean up. We hurt someone, we have to go maybe get an ice pack or get a Band-Aid. So you want that child who is the child having the negative behavior, the bully, the aggressive. Of course, we don't want to label them, but you know who they are. You want them to become part of the solution and not part of the problem anymore. So you want to help them, and that's another very counterintuitive strategy that I'm going to tell you, and that often teachers or parents will think, oh my gosh, this doesn't sound right. But when there's a fight, you go to the child who did the aggression, the child who is the bully first, and you help that child feel better. The child who's hitting another child is not feeling good about himself already. He's already not having a good day. And you want to help that child feel good, so then this child can go with you to help the child who got hurt, and then this child can become part of the solution instead of part of the problem. So now that you're feeling better, let's go talk to Sophia and help her feel better. What can you do to help her feel better? Maybe it's getting an ice pack, maybe it's getting a Band-Aid, maybe it's writing a letter, drawing a picture, bringing a work that she really likes, taking her outside for some fresh air. So he has to think of an apology of action. And how can we fix hurt feelings? So when it's a physical thing, it's easier for us to fix because you can say you walk him to the nurse, right? Get him a wet paper towel for the scratch or whatever it is. But when it's the hurt feelings, anybody has suggestions for how to fix hurt feelings? How do you usually do that in your classroom? Validate them. Restitution. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, they do have. Yeah. A high five, a hug, or something that they will come up with. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So building empathy. So how do we help our students to understand how the other person is feeling, right? So that's a practice. And I always tell teachers, nobody's expecting a 5-year-old to know calculus, right? We all know that they're going to learn to road count and they're going to build up on numeracy skills, and eventually they're going to do calculus. And it's a process, a long process. But when it comes to social-emotional behavior, we want it right now. And it is a process, just like the academic process, just like the skills that our children are building. So it's unrealistic of us to expect that would happen right now or today, tomorrow, in a month. So sometimes it's really helping them understand what the other person may be feeling. How would you be feeling if that happened to you? When someone does that to me, I usually feel this way. So you can role play, role model. Doing a lot of role play during the classroom meetings is a great tool. I had a hand there. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yes. Exactly. So I was going to talk about how we can recover from mistakes. So mistakes is the only way children will learn. We learn, it's trial and error. We have to experience. If we don't let them experience social mishaps, they won't learn. So we are very good about helping our children with physical, we teach them physical hygiene. But there's this great TED Talk that's called Emotional Hygiene, and it's a doctor named Guy Winch, and he's a psychiatrist. And he talks about all the emotional injuries that we go through life every day. Loneliness, failure, rejection, and then emotional injuries with conflict with friends or relationships that we have. And then he talks about how we value so much the physical hygiene or our physical body more than we value our emotional body. So he gave the example of a 5-year-old who was brushing his teeth, and then he fell off the stool and cut his leg, and he cried for a second, and then he got right back up and got a Band-Aid from the medicine cabinet and patched himself up. And a 5-year-old knew that he needed a Band-Aid for his cut, and he was also brushing his teeth, so he knew about hygiene. But what are we teaching our children about emotional hygiene? And then he went on to talk about this woman into her 40s who had been married for almost 20 years, had a very painful divorce, and then she was just getting back into dating. She had met someone online that seemed like a great fit, and she went out for drinks to meet this guy. And then 10 minutes into the date, the guy walked away and said, "No, this is not going to work, and I'm leaving." And she just felt rejected, she felt lonely, and so she called up a friend, and the friend said, "Well, but you're not that attractive. You're not that interesting or accomplished. What do you really have to talk about? You probably bored him." Shocking, right? A friend would say that? Well, it wasn't her friend. That's what she told herself. And this is what we do. Our physical injuries, we go there and we patch up. We would never make it worse and pour salt on it. But our emotional injuries, we actually make it worse. We talk ourselves down and we rationalize that we really didn't deserve that promotion anyway. I wasn't good enough. The other person was much better. And we do that all the time. So our children are also learning. We are giving, and you probably, have you ever sound like your mother? The adults in our lives gave us our inner voice, and we are giving our students their inner voice, and our children. So all of this that I talked today is really about giving them this positive and this very sweet and kind and beautiful inner voice. And to talk about the apology that she was talking about is a really great way to recover from mistake. So always asking the child to be specific about, instead of just saying, I'm sorry because, and then stating exactly what they did, and then, can you please forgive me? And even if the other person is not ready to forgive, that they have to accept that graciously, the yes or the no, and understand that the other person may not be ready to forgive, but they asked for the forgiveness. And then also explaining to the other student that forgiveness doesn't only make the other person feel good and feel like they were accepted, that their attempt was accepted, but also make themselves feel better if they forgive. So then you can talk to both students that way. And that's it. Just go on and nourish the spirits and give purpose. Thank you. And I do have this beautiful quote, and it's one of my favorite authors. He was a psychologist, a parent educator, Haim Ginott. I have come to the frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. I possess tremendous power to make life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. And I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. And in all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis is escalated or de-escalated, and a person is humanized or dehumanized. If we treat people as they are, we make them worse. If we treat people as they ought to be, we help them become what they are capable of becoming. That's it. Thank you. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask them. Emotional hygiene, and the name of the doctor is Guy Winch. Guy Winch.
I work with middle school students, and I find that they often, when they have a conflict, they'll, since they were trained as kids, very little kids, I don't like it when you do this, or I feel sad when you do this, but when they're 12, 13, 14, they feel that language to be very triggered, so they don't take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on that, or resources for kind of I'm trying to figure out how to help them make their language more mature.
Yeah, so I get into this when I talk about the bug and the wish, and I always say if you have older students, you don't want to say bugs me or I wish this, then you want to start to say I appreciate. So the word appreciation is a mature word. Thank you. And that they sense that, I really appreciate when, or if you do this the next time, and talking about, it really makes me, angry or frustrated, trying to, say what it is that they feel, but explain to them that the most mature people are the people that can actually communicate their feelings effectively. So you can explain to them, the great leaders, the people that make a difference are usually the people that are, they are very authentic, they are, vulnerable, but they know how to deliver what they feel in a very good way, in a very effective way, and it's no shame on doing it, and it's not a childish thing to do, but then they appreciate, I would appreciate if you do this the next time, or I didn't like this. So I don't know, but I would try to give them that empowerment that it's not a childish thing to admit what you feel, because we are trained to shove our feelings down and to not say how we feel, and that you don't want to be a baby, right? We hear stop being a baby, stop complaining, so we are all trained. By the time we're in middle school, we already have that bad view of admitting our feelings or being able to talk. And they're trying to be cool. They want to fit in. So it's really trying to break that paradigm, or trying to shift their mind to see it, and maybe talking to all the students about maybe finding an author or someone that is really good about, giving a good example about it. But I don't know, probably.
I don't think that many.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, by the way.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome. I hope it was helpful.
I'm wondering about, so if, say, you're the teacher in the classroom, or even outside of that, if you're angry, frustrated, upset, or you don't immediately know how to deal with the situation, but you have to deal with it, obviously, because you can't ever just not deal with something. What's your opinion about kind of admitting your feelings to kids? So being I'm angry, I need to walk away for a minute.
I find it to be so good to just come clean, because children need to know that we are just humans. It's very damaging for children to have adults around them who seem to be perfect, who never admit to make mistakes or to feel things, because they know that they're feeling things all the time, and that they are so imperfect that having those adults around them just make them feel so much worse about themselves. So I always tell parents and teachers, come clean about how you feel. I'm very angry at you right now. I wanted to take a break because I want to make sure that we are both respectful to each other. When I talk to you, I want to make sure that I'm respectful, and I don't feel I can be respectful right now. So let's talk about this later. So, of course, if they're really little, they're going to be like, "Ooh, what did you just say?" So you might just have to say, "You know what? I'm going to go take a break. I'm going to go clean up over here. I will be right back with you to talk about this." But give yourself a break. Like, take that time out yourself as much as you can, and never, like, even if you have to address another day, like, it's a much more productive way to address, like, even if you have to wait it out. Or just when you're really angry, I'm going to write this down in our classroom meeting so we can talk about this next week. So then you know you got a week to cool and you don't need to address that. If it's something you've got to address right away and you're angry and maybe you make the mistake like I did of shaming, blaming, threatening, put it in 20 seconds. Like sometimes we just can't help ourselves. We even know that this is wrong and I shouldn't be doing, but that doesn't stop us from doing it. Because parents and teachers tell us all the time that, like, I frighten my children, my students, and I know that that's bad and it's wrong, but I can't help because, you know, sometimes we'll do it. And then just come back and try it again, do the take two. You know what? The way I handled that wasn't pretty. It didn't really teach you kindness. I don't think I was a good, you know, wasn't my best way to deal with the situation. I want to try this again. And then say, you know, I'm sorry for the way that I did this, and maybe I was too rough, or my voice, I use an angry hand or angry voice, whatever it is. And then you just say, and I shouldn't. Can you please forgive me? And kind of like try again. So let's talk about this. How can we solve this? But yes, if you're the only one there, give yourself a break. And if you do make the mistake of, you know, you don't do your best at, you know, solving it, forgive yourself and just try it again. Like, that's the best thing. Just keep that as your guiding star. It's just something that you always come back to it, because we're going to, you know, fall back into our old teaching habits or old parenting habits, the stuff that was done to us. We talk to people the way it was, you know, people put us down, made us feel stupid, and now it comes so naturally to us to make someone else feel stupid or, you know, use an angry hand or angry voice. So you just have to forgive yourself and then try it again, because children are so resilient and so forgiving that they really, but they are just going to benefit from you even coming clean and admitting and doing this over. It's already a lesson in itself.
I'm just thinking, like, it might kind of, you know, like when you get in those situations and you're like, I've already, you know, like said one thing, or like I turned the lights off and they didn't get quiet. What do I do now? It's like the last resort.
Yeah.
And I have never really like actually thought about that in practice before, so I was just going through it during your presentation. Like, I'm like in my mind picturing being
all
like,
the scenarios.
Everyone, I'm really angry right now. I need to walk away because I'm very sad about how our classroom is right now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm imagining the kids would be like,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. And you always want to do this also in a very like mindful way. We don't want to ever like do that as like a guilt trip to them, or like try to like withdraw our love and attention from them. Like, I'm not going to be with you right now because, you know, like just kind of punishing them. Like, now you're not going to have my attention. So you want to always make it but I think that that's beautiful. Like, I am very angry and I just need some time right now. And let's talk about this at circle time later in our meeting. And then you role play it again. Let's do it. And maybe you stop the whole thing and say, wait a second, I just turned the lights off and nobody stopped or nobody quieted down. That really makes me feel like nobody's listening to me. And it really bugs me when people don't listen to me. And I really wish people would. Let's try this again. Everybody move around and then, you know, be loud and noisy. I'm going to try it again. And then you do it and see what happens. Maybe you do it like a few times. And then you kind of like make a thing out of it. Sorry. And like just role play it. So maybe that's what's helpful. You're welcome. Go ahead. I think you were the first. So the lying, and that's a big one that teachers always ask me about, and parents too, but lying is such a natural thing. Like, we all lie multiple times a day. There's some research that talks about how we lie about 300 times a day. In men, it's about twice as much. So we're lying for all different reasons, and I always explain this to children. Why do we lie? We all lie. So first you want to make them feel like they're normal, like this is like a normal behavior. Lying is just one of the basic things that we all do. And why do we do it? Maybe I'll say you look really pretty because maybe I don't think you looked really pretty in a certain thing, but I will say to just make, you're gorgeous, by the way. But like we will say like, oh, I really like this shirt, but maybe you don't like, but you do it to make someone feel good. Or I really like this food, but maybe you didn't like, you just do it to make the person feel good. Or you do it to protect. Like, I don't want it to, mommy to be mad or the teacher to be mad. I don't want to be in trouble. So I lied, because I don't want that to happen. So you talk about all the reasons why we lie. Sometimes we lie because we're afraid. Sometimes we lie because it's embarrassing to admit that we did something silly, stupid, or we made a mistake. You are gorgeous. Oh my gosh, man! I just look at it. I just looked at you and I'm like, that was totally not. And so you just explain about like what are the reasons why we lie, and then talk to them, connect, make them feel like they're human and they're fine, and then say we're all working on not doing it, because it's really important that we can trust in each other. That trust is not something, it's not a given. When teachers say, well, I trust my students, or they have older students, or parents say, I trust my teenagers. I'm like, why do you trust them? Like, you should not trust. Like, their job is to push the limits, to try different things, to experience. Like, trust is something that you build. So you talk to them about that. Like, I trust, when you can name the other teacher that's with you, because I know that I can count on her. I know that she's telling the truth, that when she says something that's really, she's not trying to trick me or sneak. So I trust her. But we have this relationship. And if for some reason she lies to me, I might not trust her anymore. And it would take a long time for me to trust her again. She would have to do so much for me to trust her again. And then you explain that, and I really want to trust you. And then you tell him, you don't need to be afraid of me. Like, because you say we all make mistakes, and that's how we learn, from our mistakes. And then whenever you do something that you're embarrassed about, or you feel like you need to sneak or hide, write about it. Like, tell them to find a way to say, or say to another person even, but it's hurtful for me to see you lying to me, especially when I saw you doing something, like when I know it was a lie, it really hurts my feelings. So you explain, but it's really more like giving them a lesson on why we all lie, how can we are all trying to be honest people and be authentic. And
the biggest thing in my room that I'm trying to solve always is, Jack called me stupid, and Jack's like, no, I didn't. And then I don't know where to go from there.
So that's when I say don't look for blame, because we spend so much time figuring out who did what and who started and who did it to who, and they're all pointing fingers. So just it takes two to tango, right? So it looks like the two of you are having a hard time right now. How can I help the two of you solve this? Let's see, what can we do? You can change your friend. What can you do so this doesn't happen next time? So that's always a good one, like reminding them that we can change other people, that we got to change ourselves. So you can change your friend. What can you do so you're not into this situation before? Or what are some of the solutions? But just focus on the solution and don't look for the blame and don't focus on the problem.
For Jack to get in trouble, and I can't. No one can prove that it happened. And so, okay.
Yeah, and just say, and I don't take sides because you are all so important to me, and I really don't take sides.
Okay.
Sometimes
I would say to that child, oh, that's not okay that Jack did that. What did you tell him?
Did you remind? I love that. Help them remind their friends. So you don't need to tell me. Remind him of how we behave. And then, so they can just.
Not okay. Yes. Right. But if you validate.
And sometimes they do a lot for shock value, the lies, the stuff. They just want to see us oh, what? Yeah. And it gives them it's a lot of power when they see us out of shape or reacting or out of control. That's actually oh my gosh, I made my teacher look like that, and she talked and she got so angry. That's a lot of power. A little child can make us that vulnerable and that upset. That's actually giving them so much power. That's why Maria Montessori always talked about being so matter of fact and very flat emotionally, not whoo, because we want to show that we're not really affected by that they can't shock us because we are the leaders and we are guiding them and we got this.
Okay, so that's my question.
at home. Oh, no. You know what? I struggle with that because I always thought that parenting was going to be a breeze. I was like totally so overly confident about it. I thought I would have it. I was like, oh, I've been in the classroom for so long. My whole background, my master's in this. I've been teaching parents. I was already like doing parenting workshops before I was even a parent. Totally not even know what I was talking about. But like when I had my children, she was a great baby, but by the time she turned 2, I was like, what happened? Now she's not doing what I want. Things are not working. Why does she hate me? I was like, what is wrong? So it's, yeah. So we react to them because there's only a few stages in life. So when we operate in 3 ego states: the child ego state, the adult ego state, and the parent ego state. All of us, even children. So the child ego state is that very playful. We're up and down. We're either super angry and having a tantrum, or we are having the best time of our lives. That's the child state. The parent state is a very flat state when we're just having a conversation, we're transmitting information, receiving, translating, and just doing that. So it's like you guys right now, we're all in an adult stage, ego state. And then there's the parenting ego state where we're managing, correcting, directing, and being that. And children use that when they're in their play and they're bossing other ones around, or they're pretending with their, their pretend play. They have their adult ego state when they're just receiving and passing information. But they are mostly in their child ego state, like super up and super down. So we see such, emotion, such a range of emotion. And adults, we learned, so we grew out of that child state, and we live on that adult parent state most of the time. And another phase in our lives when we go back to being in that child state of being super angry or super happy is when we become parents. We go back into this very vulnerable time of our lives because they can really touch us, like our feelings, like we are really impacted by what they do, and they have such power over our feelings that we see ourselves again into those like, oh my gosh, out of control. So being that flattened and matter of fact is so easy when it's someone else's kids, and we can't really do anything, but it's hard when it's ours. So I would say to just take time to cool off before you react. Try to be and be proactive. Try to think of all different scenarios that you face and think of like, how could I approach this? But have it already thought out before. I even talk to people about family meetings, doing just with the husband or your partner, before you even start doing it with the kids, and just talk about what's our policy about eating sugar, about play dates, about sleepovers, about jumping on a couch, where you stand. And then you feel good about that, like you have a plan, and then you are not just reacting, you actually have that. And give me a scenario, like what are your struggles most? Like you yell or you get really angry?
Just always messing my daughter. Yes, so I yell.
Yeah. So I would just say I need a break, like I want to talk when we can both be respectful, I need to cool off, and just always come clean again. And when you yell, just go back and try it over.
Oh, I'm good at apologizing.
Yeah, it's rewiring our brains because we do what was done to us, and our children, we are the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? So they really just want to make us happy. Like that's, and if you can look at them when they are pushing each other's buttons or whatever, and see that what they're trying to say is really, I want to belong, I want significance, I'm a child and I want to belong. And then we look at them and we will answer or interact with them in a different state of mind when we come with a compassionate approach to them, when we know that all the things that we see, the tantrums, the power struggles, the back-talking, the sibling rivalry or peer rivalry, those are just symptoms of a much deeper issue. So we always want to get to the core of what's really going on with them. And behind all those symptoms is the lack of love and power. So you just need to think about what is lacking right now. Are they lacking attention and love from me? Are they lacking independence? Am I directing, correcting, managing, nagging, lecturing them too much, and now they're pushing back with power struggles? on the topics, because children only have this ultimate power over a few things. We can make them sleep, we can make them eat, we can make them go to the toilet, we can really make them stop fighting with their sibling. So they will pick those areas that they have power, and they will use it against you because they want to punish you. So figuring it out, the core reasons behind, will help you also start to look at them and interacting with them in a way that's much calmer, because you were actually investigating what's underneath. So it's like there's an arsonist setting fires around town, and you can go out and put out fires, or you can catch the arsonist. You want to get to this core reason behind, and that will make you feel much calmer. When you know that that's your, you were investigating, you're actually the spy, here are my children, she's having trouble or he's having trouble, what is behind this behavior? And then you start approaching it that way. We remove ourselves from being emotionally attached to the situation. We can kind of detach. We almost look at it from an outsider, oh, I see the situation. I can see the two of you are having a hard time getting along. I can see the two of you are pushing each other's button. Maybe the two of you need a break from each other or whatever. How can I help the two of you? I'm not taking any sides. I'm not going to referee. It's your relationship. I tell my girls all the time, this is your relationship. She's your sister. I'm not going to be solving your problems all the time unless there's really big, an aggression out there. But usually I'll say, I trust the two of you can solve this. Or you got to figure it out. How are you going to make her feel better? Oh, I see Juliet's crying. What are you going to do? I don't usually go there and cuddle the one that's crying or pick her up, even though she's 2. I say, well, you got to figure out a way to, fix this. You just made her cry. Now you got to fix it. So then I can remove myself from being emotionally attached to the situation and just be kind of okay, I'm just here to look at this and figure out a way to solve the underlying problems that are, I hope that helped. But I do, you saw the example, and it happens all the time. I'm and I know this stuff. So I do this stuff because I need the reminder, I need the practice. Otherwise, we fall right back into the old parenting habits. If you want to go on my website, it's called thepurposefulchild.com. I just putting together a 21-day parenting challenge. It's another challenge. I'm calling it an experience. It's a mindful parenting, and it's a free thing. So you can just sign up, and then you're going to receive a video for 21 days. So that might get you started. Oh, you're welcome. I am. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know. So you can. It's tricky because you can help them become useful. Sometimes that will help if they can come sit next to you and be helpful. But that sometimes make everybody feel, he's being rewarded by the bad behavior. You can ask another child to help him, maybe partner him up with a buddy and say, who would you like to sit next that would help you sit and stay, quiet and still, so then that he can have a buddy that's going to be giving him some feedback. So you talk about sometimes we need some feedback. I'm not sure I'm doing a good job until people tell me if I'm doing a good job or not, and I often want to know. So you can find a buddy that will give you that feedback, that will say, you're talking too much, or you're being too loud, sit down. So you can talk to the children and then explain this on a meeting, and then say, if you feel like you need help, you can look for a friend to be the person that's giving you some feedback about how you're behaving. And then you can also try what can you do to make yourself feel good right now? Do you need, do you want to go sit and read a book? Do you want to go sit at the peace area? So you give him a choice, so you're not sending him and isolating. You can just offer him to get that out of his system. If he needs to wiggle around, maybe for him to, do you want to go get a glass of water, or do you want to go do something? And it might get everybody to okay, now I want the water too. Yeah, so it's hard to and sometimes just come sit with me, maybe just sitting. And then another time, taking that time for practice, how do we sit in circle? Do it again, go back to the basics, stop the whole thing and just let's role play. How do we sit? Do we sit and wiggle and get up and touch the person next to us? Or do we so you do the whole role playing with the child, and maybe you have to do it every, once a week. If that's a problem, it's always, how do we line up? Sometimes we just have to go back to the basics and do it over with them because they still didn't, or a few of them didn't get. And then thinking of a logical consequence, like those 5 R's: respectful, reasonable, related, reveal it up front, and then repeat it back. Say it's really disrupting when you are moving around or fooling around in a circle. And what are some of the things we can do to solve this problem? And then maybe you pick one, or you decide what you're going to do. If you can sit still, I'm going to ask you to come sit with me, or I'm going to ask you to sit at the peace table. Because that's reasonable, and you're agreeing with him. And then you reveal it up front, and you say, what's your understanding of what's going to happen? Oh, I'm going to have to go sit at the peace table. Then you're not just, and you can do that with all of them. And then it's not like you're shaming them. It's an agreement that everybody is on board with it. It's disruptive. It's a fact. You feel frustrated. You tell how you feel. And then you talk about, if children are not sitting down properly in circle, I'm going to ask them to go sit in a peace area. What's your understanding of what's going to happen to children who are not sitting properly in circle? Oh, your teacher are going to ask us to sit. So then everybody knows. And then if the situation arises, you follow through and say, you can go sit there. Please come back whenever you're ready. So you don't say sit there until I tell you so, 3 minutes or whatever. You just say, come back whenever you're ready. We would love for you to join us again. And then
we already want you to be part of our circle, but it seems that you really don't. If you're not feeling well, if you want to sit yourself and join us when you
yeah.
And it works. I mean, but I didn't know because sometimes when you see, it's like a timeout. I'm not sure about that. That's what I want to ask.
You need to know, in your heart, what is your intention, because that's usually what it is. Because there's such a fine line between using the peace table as a timeout or using it as a cool-off space. And it really, even if you use the words, the right words, the scripted words that I have, your body language, your facial expression, your tone of voice might give a different message. Because I can say, oh, it looks like you need a break from circle time. Or it looks like you need a break from circle time. It's a different. So you can say the same thing, but in your heart you're feeling differently. So you want to make sure that you don't say it in anger, that you have loving eyes, loving voice, and that you communicate, letting that message of love get through. And I tell this to parents mostly. This one mom, she said, I smacked my child. He was getting into traffic. And I feel horrible because I spanked my child or whatever, I smacked my child. And then I said, wow, why did you do it? Oh, because he was going to run into the street. And I was like, and why don't you want him to run into the street? And she looked at me like, well, I don't want him to get hit by a car. I'm like, why don't you want him to get hit by a car? And she's like, well, I don't want him to get hurt. And she was looking at me like, what? And I was like, why don't you want him to get hurt? And then I asked why, and she said, because I love him. That's the bottom line, is that we do everything that we do to our children and to our students because we love them. But do they get the message of love? For the child, often I just got smacked, or I just got yelled or threatened or sent in timeout. That's all they see. They don't see that we did it out of love, or we did it because we want their best, or we did because we want to teach them. They just see that. So we need to make sure that we are giving the message of love through the action, the way that we react to them. So, yeah.
What is the next step? As a teacher, when we go back into the classroom, what do we do? Because if you're coming from a more traditional perspective, it's not going to happen overnight. So do you rope in yourself and your team? What kind of practical steps? That's a whole other topic.
I know, but you can even bring the idea to other teachers. So now you can bring what you learned and present in a faculty meeting and see if everybody would get on board. And there's Positive Discipline in the Classroom, so you can get that book. That will give you some more tools for the next step. And then you start to role play with the other teachers even, or you start running your circle time in this more purposeful way instead of just, all the stuff that we do is adorable with the weather and the days of the week and the months and counting how many days we've been in school and the helping hands. All that stuff is sweet, but it's really sometimes more it's an empty thing. It's like a filler. So this stuff is a more substantial, there's actually more value to it. So if you can start replacing some of that things or just once in a while bringing some more purpose into the circle time, that would already make a huge difference. There's this one activity that I always do with teachers when I train them. It's how to have an almost perfect school year, and you do with the kids, and you talk about, like, you probably have those like essential agreements or like rules of your classroom that you do with the kids, right? It's the same idea, but you do it in a way that's much more clear for them. So let's say, what are some of the things that we need so we have a great year, an almost perfect school year? And then they're going to say we need to be kind to each other. It boils it all down to kind to each other, kind to the materials, respecting other people's work, blah, 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 the 5 things that we always have, right? But then you don't let it just become that. You write each one of them, so being kind to each other, right? And you say, what does that sound like? And what does that look like? And then you write, oh, being kind to each other sounds like, oh, you are my friend, I like you. It sounds like, come do a work with me. Or let's play together in a playground. And then you have all the things they are going to brainstorm, and they are the ones telling what it sounds like. And what does it look like? What do we do? Oh, being kind to each other is when we say, oh, let me help you when a child needs help, when a friend needs help. Or let me help you clean this up. Or, of course, you can join and have a lesson with me. This is the stuff that we do. We have a lesson together, we play together, we are helpful, we say, can I help you, or thank you, whatever. So those are the ways that what it sounds like and what it looks like. What it is, but they don't really know what that is really involved. Like, what is, like, okay, being kind to each other and respectful, but like, so now they know what it sounds like, what it looks like. And then you do each one of them. So every day you take one of those 5 things that you have in your rules and you break it down this way. And then you even say, so now let's write, like, why do we do that? Why do we want to be kind to each other? So we are kind to each other because, we learn more when we feel welcomed and loved or whatever. So you find a reason with them, and they're going to come up with a reason. And then you do the same thing for the other things. What keeping our environment clean looks like and what it sounds like. Oh, teacher, what do you need me to help you with? Oh, how can I put this away? How do I clean up this banana work? Or whatever, like all the stuff. So that's like one way to take the next step, like just bring it and like get it deeper into this and just start using it all the time. And then there's, I do the positive discipline training for teachers, and they use, there's a teacher's guide and there's a teacher's a leader's guide and a teacher's guide that you can probably buy from the website. And then there's tons of little activities that you can use in your family, in your classroom meeting. Yeah. So. The Daniel Siegel, The Hobie Rain Child, Parent from the Inside Out. Oh, the emotional hygiene. It's a TED Talk. His name is Guy Winch. Guy, like just a guy. And then Winch, W-I-C-N-C-H. N-C-H. Superman.